Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be talking about our friend, the Nintendo Entertainment System, one of history's most unreliable video game consoles, very sadly. Now, it's not that the electronics in this thing were bad, Nintendo used shitty parts or anything like that. Really, what it all stems from is a very strange marketing decision. See, when Nintendo made the Famicom, which is, while it looks drastically different, it is the same machine, they designed it completely differently for North America and Europe. And they based it on the VCR. The idea being that, you know, with a VCR, you put a VHS tape into the machine and then it sits down into the machine and it plays that way. They thought, okay, we can do that with a video game console and it'll appeal to Westerners because they're very familiar with the VCR. The VCR is something to be taken seriously, again in the mid-80s. So that created some problems, though, as far as reliability. See, with most cartridge-based consoles, let's use the N64 as an example. You take the cartridge, you just put it in the top of the machine, and it uses what's called a straight load. It just connects right into the motherboard, and it reads that way. That's why it is pretty reliable. The NES doesn't do that, though. The NES, of course, when you put the cartridge in, it'll go down on an angle, and then you'll feel it make contact with a set of pins, and then you push it down to make contact with another set of pins. That process is wonky, for lack of a better word. It just doesn't. It means that it's not that common that all the pins connect correctly. And to make matters worse, when you keep it down, the pins will bend because it's kind of an unnatural thing to have the cartridge do. So over time, the 72-pin connector, as we now call it, gets more and more unreliable. So there are all sorts of band-aid methods to try and make your NES work. Of course, the most common and famous one is that people will be like, oh, I'll take the cartridge and blow right into it. Terrible fucking idea. You should never do that. Because all that happens is you get the moisture on your breath onto the pins, in essence creating dirt and corrosion on the pins, that you then put into the console and just make the problem worse. Not a good idea. So other people will say, well, they'll find these weird tricks like, oh, I'll put a cartridge in and then I'll put a second cartridge on top of it, creating more pressure, thus making the connection more reliable. There are others, of course, like myself, who will say, no, you should just clean the whole console, clean the contacts and get it more reliable and get it working that way. Or you could disable the 10 NES chip, something I've also done. Now, the 10 NES chip is a security chip that Nintendo put into this thing that really isn't necessary. It's only there to prevent basically pirated carts and import carts. The games only require 60 out of the 72 pins, thus not really needing the other 12. So if you disable the chip, you don't solve the problem, but you do improve the probability that it works. For example, this top console has the chip disabled, whereas the bottom one does not. And you can see in both cases they don't have the game in there. As I'm sure you're all very aware if you've had NESs, that blinking screen is very common, the blinking light of death. You get that, you get multiple colors of screens, you get games that'll like display but be distorted, you'll get games that'll start and they'll reset constantly. All of those problems, all of them, stem from that damn 72-pin connector. So other people will say, all right, you know what I'll do is I'll open up the console, I'll take the 72-pin connector out, I'll clean it all up, I will straighten the pins back out, and I'll get this whole thing working. And it's like, great, yes, that will make it function for a while, because you haven't really solved the problem, you've just, again, kind of put a patch on it. So other people do basically the same thing. They'll be like, all right, I'm not going to do it myself, I'll just go out and buy a replacement 72-pin connector myself, and I'll fix it that way. Well, again, none of these are solutions. For the last 30 years, there has not been a solution. Until now. And it comes courtesy of a company called ArcadeWorks, who sent me what's in this box. And I'm very excited about it. Now, ArcadeWorks and I began discussing with each other, and they were cool enough to send this to me absolutely for free, basically a review unit. And I wanted to do this video because I knew this was something that a lot of you would care about, and I wanted to be able to tell you if this is a good investment or not. What this is, basically, is a replacement 72-pin connector and new loading tray, and it's supposed to make the console amazing. So I want to know how good it really is and if we can truly approve of it. So we're just going to take the console, we're going to take the box here and open it up, and I'll show you all the contents. Now, yes, it is a do-it-yourself type of thing, but I'll show you how to do it. It's super easy. So inside we have, of course, styrofoam, and we have the kit itself, and that's really all there is just this little thing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and inside you'll have a few different pieces. Now, the first thing you have is, well, we'll go with this. It's a new loading tray. See, now part of the problem with the NES is, of course, that loading tray is a strange design. So if you want to have essentially a straight load, which is what basically will happen after you install this, thus making it more reliable, you can't use that original spring-loaded thing. You have to replace that with this, so that's why they provide that. They also, of course, give you a set of instructions if you need it. I'm not going to read that, but they also, of course, give you this. Now, this is the real meat and potatoes of this. It comes, well, it also comes with a couple of bonus stickers, which is interesting. One that you can put right on there on the console if you want, which, of course, has the name of the product, which is Blinking Light Win. Again, I'll have a link in the description to this, so you can go check them out. And it also comes with a sticker that says, "Keep calm and don't press down." See, now that's significant, because once you do this installation, you will not press down on the cartridges anymore. It will become a straight load, which is awesome. So here we have it. This is the brand new designed 72-pin connector. Oh yes, sure beats this one. And like I said, I'll show you installation in a minute, but the other thing that's really cool about this is that it has a bonus chip on it. And what's the function of that bonus chip? Once you have this installed, regardless if you have the 10 NES chip activated or not, this will essentially disable it, thus allowing you to play all of the pirate games and imports as well, and just making the console generally more reliable. In order to open up your NES, all you have to do is flip it over to the bottom, and you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screw points on the bottom. And unlike all the other Nintendo consoles, this one actually just uses a standard Phillips head screwdriver, so it's super easy to get inside of. Once you have all the screws out, it's time to just take the lid off. Comes off very easily. And then you'll get down to this, and you'll see the RF shield. Now there's multiple screws here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 around the edge. Once these 7 screws are out, you can just take this RF shield off. It might be a little bit caught on this piece, but it'll come up relatively easily. And then you are at your 72-pin connector and load tray. Now you must take the load tray out of there. The load tray has 2 screws right there, as well as 2 on the back, plus these 2 silver ones, so a total of 6. And those silver ones are significant, remember that. Now that those have been removed, you can take your loading tray out, just kind of push it up like this, and it's free, and wave goodbye to it because you'll never need it again. Now, we have to get to the bottom of the board because we have to get this, the 72-pin connector, out of there. Now, in order to do that, there's just a couple of screws remaining, and they're both over here. There's one back there and one right there. Once those 2 screws are out of there, this is pretty easy. Just use the composite port back here to kind of push up, and you'll get this out. And at that point, you can kind of finagle this up a little bit, and basically just kind of pop the 72-pin connector off. Now, that might be a little difficult because that connection, ironically, is pretty secure. But if you just kind of wiggle it, there you go. It'll just come out like that. And then what you're going to do, of course, is take the new one and make sure that you do this correctly. See the ones with the arrows pointing up? Obviously, those go up. So then you connect it right here on the back and put that into place. And congratulations, you just installed the new connection. Now, of course, you have to get the RF shield to line back up again and everything, and I'm having trouble doing that on camera. I know that looked pretty difficult, but I swear it's not. It's just a matter of kind of moving pieces around to get it fitting back together. But anyway, now we're going to reassemble it. So the first place to start is we have these 2 screws, and as you'll recall, they go in right there and right there. It's time to take our brand new loading tray and fit it in. So now you'll see that there is these basically like these tracks here. Now you're gonna have to basically slide them onto the board like that, and it'll just go right into place and just sit down. Now, this is ironic because I'm realizing this just as I look at this. Those 2 silver screws I was telling you about that were very, very important, yeah, they're totally not important at all, and you can totally forget about them. There's 4 screw points here, and they use those 4 brass ones that came out at the same time. So go ahead and put all 4 of those back into place. I might suggest not tightening them too much, just kind of get them comfortably tight, because with the original loader, that was an issue. If you made it too tight, it would never work, so I'm just kind of assuming that might still be there. Also, while it's open, I thought I'd give you a visualization of what this looks like. See, when you put it in, you know, it just connects, okay? It doesn't push down. Now, of course, I didn't actually load it yet, but you get the idea. So the next move here is we got to take our RF shield and kind of sit that into place, and then take all 7 of its screws and put them in. Now that that's back in place, all we do is take our lid here and sit it back on top.
then flip the console over and put all 6 of its respective screws back into place. And our blinking light win is now installed. Another note here, the front screws, I would not tighten them too tightly either for the exact same reason that caused problems on the original connector, and what the hell, let's just not create them here. Now, before we test this out, I want to give you guys a little note. Now, I cannot stress enough the significance of cleaning your games before you stick them in a brand new connector. Now, in order to do that, it's very simple. You just take a Q-tip, you take some Windex or window lean as it's known in certain places, you put it on the Q-tip just like this, and then you rub it along the pins. Now, this particular cartridge isn't very dirty, so I don't expect much to come out of there, but that's what you got to do to properly clean your games. And then after you get dirt out of there, you swap it to the dry side, and you do exactly the same process. And then, of course, just let it sit for a few minutes and air dry some more before trying it out. I've got the console all set up, and I've got the same exact game. Now we'll pop this in, which I should warn you, requires a little bit more force, generally with 2 hands, although as you just saw, it is very possible to do it with 1. Now I gotta stress this, you don't push down anymore. You don't need to do that. So it is a straight load now, but does it work? Let's find out. It works perfectly, no problems whatsoever, no fucking stupid blue screens or any of that shit. It's just great. I'm gonna keep playing with this thing for a while and see if I notice any problems or anything like that, and I'll hit you guys up in a bit with final thoughts.
Now, the short version of my final thoughts is this thing is really, really good, and I really, really recommend it. But there are some things that are worth noting. First is that region lockout chip thing that I was talking about. That doesn't quite work the way I thought it did. I was reading the instructions that came with it, and I figured this is something worth reading. However, this doesn't really apply to North Americans, so if you're like me, you're an American, or you're in Canada, etc., this won't really matter to you, but for everyone else, you need to hear this. Power cycle the system to change regions. Switch the system on and off. This is mostly for non-NTSC, aka Americans and Canadians, users, as the initial region is NTSC. Each time you power cycle, the lockout chip will auto-magically switch to the next region. Once it detects the region of your system, it will remember the setting and you should be set for life. Up to 4 power cycles may be required to find the correct region. It cycles through the regions in this order: NTSC, PAL A, PAL B, and Asia. Now, again, I can't really test this because I don't have a PAL unit. I don't own any PAL games, etc. So if you're not in North America, you might require an extra step to get this thing to fully functional, but beyond that, you should be good to go. So with that in mind, once you are at that same point, here's what we have to say about the device as positive. It's great. Every single game I threw at it worked fine, every time. First try, every single time, it always worked. Now, that is important to note that I keep my cartridges clean. Before I put one in, I clean it just like I showed you guys, and that's very important to do because if you stick dirty games in there, you'll have the same problem as if you stuck a dirty game in an N64 or a Genesis or something. It won't read. So make sure you do that. I tested, of course, regular NES games. I tested all the 10-gen type of games. I tested some pirate carts like this. I would have tested PAL stuff, but like I said, I don't own any. I tested Famicom games using an adapter. I tested the EverDrive. Every single one worked just fine. No issues whatsoever. So there are only a handful of negative things to report on this, and they're all small potatoes. The first is, of course, you lose the nostalgia of the, pushing the cartridge down. Boo-hoo. That is kind of the whole point. And of course, you'll end up with these extra pieces, including the 2 super important silver screws you definitely need to remember that obviously you won't use. What you do with those spare parts, of course, are up to you. I wouldn't toss them in case you need them for some reason at some point, but that's me. The only reason that matters, the fact that you're not pushing it down anymore could matter, is that obviously most people will not natively assume that your NES has the blinking light win installed, assuming your friends or family come over to play or whatever. And that could potentially be an issue because if someone just pops a cartridge in and tries pushing it down and they could potentially break something. So you'll want to educate your family, friends, whoever, before they play your NES. Now that's no doubt why it comes with a sticker basically warning that, but in the event you don't want to put that sticker on there or your friends just don't read shit, I would suggest telling people. So that's a small issue, but it should be noted. It's not the fault of the device, it's just a consequence of being there. The only real fault of this thing, and it sucks, but it's just the difficulty of getting cartridges in and out. Getting them in isn't that big of a deal. You saw it takes a little bit more pressure than usual, but again, that makes a solid connection, so it makes sense. Getting them out, though, can be kind of a pain in the ass. I found that the regular Nintendo brand ones weren't too bad. Some of the pirate carts weren't too bad. This one wasn't that easy. Bible Adventures, horrible game, as I'm sure all of you know. Wasn't that difficult. It wasn't that easy. It was harder than the regular cartridge. The ones that are a pain in the ass, though, are the 10-gen cartridges. These things are really, really difficult to get out of there. So that's a negative. However, in true NES fashion, I did find a band-aid, a patch, a workaround to get around this problem. Game Genie. Good old Game Genie, always saving us when it comes to the NES. See, if you have the Game Genie attached, just like that, you create a little bit more space. And it's much easier to put the cartridge in, no problem, just use your wrist there. But it's also much easier to get the cartridge out. Really, no problems with doing that. And of course, if you're like, well, you know what, fuck that. I don't want to use codes in my game, I want to play it real. What's up? I'm legit. You can just press start at the intro screen and skip all the codes. It's just an extra, yes, it's a slightly extra step, but trust me, it makes getting the games out way easier. But I really can't even fault it for that because, again, the whole point is to make a secure connection. And if the games work 100% of the time, that's a small problem. So there you go. That's kind of my overall thoughts. I highly recommend it, and I really want to thank ArcadeWorks for sending me one of these. They really didn't have to do that. Again, their link is in the description if you want to check it out. I believe it costs $25 US, which is really not that bad considering that like replacement ones of these can cost like $15, and these don't even really work. So there you go. So that's it. Thank you again to ArcadeWorks. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all later.